You probably had life kick you in the balls a few times. Believe me, I have. Before that, I had become so sour on women. Like, I'm never getting married again. Marriage is a scam. You know, when I met Melody, we met on Facebook, that I fell for her quite fast. I was scared because I thought maybe I was being a fool. Maybe I was being stupid. The second chances don't just happen. You have to take the risk. Welcome in, guys. Thought maybe we'd chat a little bit this morning about second chances, because a lot of this channel is about second chances, and it's really because I'm living my second chance right now. Kind of had a rebirth in my life, and a lot of that is wrapped around my relationship with Melanie, but it's also wrapped around entering a different stage of life where my kids are all raised and gone, and I just recently retired, so obviously I have more free time than I used to, a lot less responsibilities. And if you watch a lot of Philippines channels, there's probably a pretty good chance you're looking for a second chance. You probably had life kick you in the balls a few times. Believe me, I have. And you hope that maybe through either traveling abroad, which might be the Philippines, or finding a good woman, finding a good Filipina, might give you that second chance. And one of the whole reasons I started this channel was to try to encourage you guys to do what I did, because it really can work, and it really can bring you a level of peace and joy that you really kind of thought was gone. I can tell you, I thought it was. I never thought I would get to this point in my life where I'm as happy and content as I am, where my life is just full of so much. You know, after I went through my divorce, there was 12 years between my divorce and meeting Melanie. And during those 12 years, obviously, like I said, there were a lot of really tough years dealing with my ex-wife and all that entailed, and particularly trying to raise my boys. But outside of that, I really, once I got through the initial healing process, which took a while, I really was pretty happy. I was really pretty content. I certainly wasn't miserable. I had a lot of blessings, and I've always tried to focus on what the good is, even if, life sucks sometimes. But truth be told, deep down inside, there was always a part of me that really wanted love, that really wanted to find a good woman, that wanted to love a good woman, that wanted to be loved by a good woman. I think every man wants that deep down. A lot of times, we're men, we don't want to admit we ever need anything, right? Believe me, I've been there. I went through those years. Believe me, when I first started dating Melanie, and she changed me like that, because before that, I had become so sour on women, and so sour on Western women, that I was like, I'm never getting married again. Marriage is a scam. Marriage is terrible. It's all in favor of the women, which I think is largely true in the West. And that's why when I met Melanie and things changed so fast, I kind of knew that once I decided I was going to marry her, and I decided I was going to bring her to America, that I needed to tell all my friends and family as quickly as possible, because they were going to be so shocked and so surprised, because all they'd heard me talk about for years is how I would never get married again, and how marriage was a scam. You know what they say, that you find love when you're least looking for it. That certainly was true with me, where I kind of got to a point where it was like, yeah, if I find a good woman, great. If I don't, I'm pretty set, man. And then I met Melanie, and it changed like that. I mean, I can't tell you. I fell for Melanie very, very fast, probably faster than I'd ever truly want to admit. But you know, when you know, you know. And obviously I did a lot of checking. I did a lot of back checking myself. Am I being a fool? Am I being a simp? Am I being stupid? You know, all those, you know, obviously I had all those concerns. Was I walking into a trap? But I pretty much knew right away that there was something very special about Melanie, and we just had a connection that was very hard to explain to anybody. It makes no sense. I get it to this day. I look at it and I go, it makes no sense, given how different our lives are, how different our backgrounds are. But it works. And it can work for you. And that's kind of what second chances are all about, right? I mean, you have to take that risk. And I guess that's a lot of what I want to talk about today is the second chances don't just happen. You have to take the risk. You know, when I met Melanie, we met on Facebook, we started chatting, and like I said, I fell for her quite fast. Well, I had to decide whether I was going to actually act on it and actually go see her and step forward. And I can tell you, it was a really scary moment. I have a whole video on this. I'll put it in the screen. I was scared because I thought maybe I was being a fool. Maybe I was being stupid. Maybe I was being scammed, and I just wasn't seeing it. So it took a real risk for me to get my second chance. But I can tell you guys, it was worth it. Second chances don't come with no risk. You're going to have to take risk. You're going to have to make the best decisions you can. And the other part of that second chance is not just about the love part, but it's about being able to retire and getting to a retirement age. Luckily I was able to retire early, and I can tell you that's simply because I lived well below my means my whole life. I had a good job, I made good money, there's no doubt, that certainly played part of it. But I can tell you, I know a lot of people who were around my age that made the kind of money I made that to this day can't retire, but not even close. And it had nothing to do with how much money they made. It had to do with how much they spent. I don't know if there's a lot of things I've done right in my life, but the one thing I did do right is I always lived below my means, and I was always able to sock a little bit of money away every single month. And I prioritized saving over buying things in the moment. And that would be my recommendation to you guys, because it is nice when you get to the far end of life and you have the freedom that having some money in the bank allows you to have. Freedom of choices. I was able to leave my job last year because for many, many years I sacrificed. And it was because I was purely focused on wanting towards the end of my life, being able to have the freedom to go and do what I want. I remember, during my working years, one of my bosses that I really love, I was pretty fortunate. I had about a 20-year span with this one company where my boss I really love, but he was a huge spender. He made big money and he spent big money. He's in his mid-70s and is still working, and it's not because he wants to, although I think he enjoys working. It's because he has to. And he used to always try to tell me, Daryl, go buy a new car, go buy a second house, he goes, the more you spend, the harder you'll work. And I was like, hell no, dude. I'm doing the exact opposite of that. And so, I was the squirrel that just kept putting nuts away, to where it gave me the freedom to call that boss that I really loved and to this day love and say, sorry, boss, time for me to go. I always try to tell my kids, I'm not sure any of them have listened, I've always said money can buy you one of two things. It can buy you things, or it can buy you freedom. But it can't buy you both. And I always chose to have my money buy me freedom. And I'm very, very glad that I did. And for me, that was a great choice. For others, maybe not. The first time I really learned how having some money squirreled away, how it could buy you freedom, is my first kind of real job. I worked there for 10 years, and they had gotten bought by another company, like a lot of them do, and new management came in, and they absolutely sucked, and I couldn't stand working for them. And they were trying to pressure me into signing a non-compete agreement. I was in sales, and the last thing you want to do in sales is sign a non-compete agreement saying for 1 year, 2 years, if you ever leave there, you can't go make a living somewhere else. So I just refused to do it, and they kept pressuring me to sign this agreement, and I just wouldn't do it. And so I eventually just left. I was in my early 30s. My oldest son was about 2 years old at the time. I hadn't had any others yet. And I just quit, and I didn't have another job, and I said, I'll figure that out, I'll find it. It took me about 2 months or 3 months to find another job, and then I moved on and continued on with my career. I stayed in the same field. But had I not had some money squirreled away that I could live for 6 months if I had to, then I couldn't have done that. I would have been a slave to those people. I would have done whatever they told me to do, and I didn't want that. And it really taught me a valuable lesson, luckily fairly early in my life, that money can buy you freedom and the power to make your own decisions. And I obviously done it before that to be able to get to that point, but after that I really turboed it, because I just realized that having a few dollars in the bank allows me the freedom to make my own choices and make my own decisions. You know, if you're living paycheck to paycheck, you're dependent on them. You're dependent on doing whatever the hell they tell you to do. They tell you to kiss the boot, you got to kiss the boot. And it's just not the way I've ever wanted to live my life. But I can tell you then, just like I was scared to death when I went to see Melanie, when I took that chance, I was scared to death then, because I, was newly married, been married a few years. I had a 2-year-old son, and my wife didn't work, so it was all on me. But boy, I'm glad that I left, and my career really took off after that. But it took taking that chance, it took taking that risk, telling them to, kick rocks. But if I had allowed fear to stop me from doing what I knew I needed to do, and if I didn't have a few dollars in the bank to give me the freedom to make that choice, then I would have been stuck. And the company I left is still there, and I still know some people that work there that were me and them, we started the company when it first started back in 1990, and they're still there all these years later, and they've been miserable for years and years and years because the management is awful. And I see a couple of these guys every once in a while, and they're getting towards retirement age, and they're just trying to endure life. And I was very fortunate that I went through some rough years right after I left there, but then after that I blossomed, and I was able to grow, and I was able to have a great career and really enjoy most of my career. And those poor guys have been there for 35 years, 36 years now, just drudging through it, hating every moment of it. And oh boy, I'm so glad that I left when I did. Yeah, I never really fit in really well within the corporate structure, dealing with incompetent people above me. I just always really, really struggled with that. I think I was really meant to be an entrepreneur, and I never really did that. And that's where, I never did take the risk. I never did take the chance that I probably should have earlier in my life. I should have went out and done something of my own. And I do kind of regret that. So if your second chance is in the Philippines, whether or not that is to retire there or to go find a Filipina or maybe both, put a plan together. Go. Make it happen. Jump. The only thing that's worse than failing, the only thing that's worse than it not working out is never trying.